Hello, welcome to the morning news. Our top story again takes us to Mexico. The campaign trail has come to an end, but violence and unrest has not. In Guerrero, Yotzinapa students and families clashed with police. 12 teacher trainees were reported injured.
Hundreds of people attended the funeral of the latest electoral victim. Miguel Angel Luna was murdered during the day at his campaign office. Electoral authorities said they would set up alternate polling stations in Oaxaca and Guerrero, where teachers and other residents are strongly opposed to Sunday's elections taking place. Unrest continued in at least 4 stations in southern Mexico. Teachers and protesters in Oaxaca and Guerrero have vowed to boycott the elections.
That's why in Guerrero we decided to say no to elections, because we have the right under Article 39, because power emanates from the people, and the people decide who governs and how they govern.
According to official reports, at least 21 people directly related to the electoral process have been killed since it began 2 months ago. In an unprecedented measure, they are banning the sale of alcohol beginning Saturday. Sunday will be the greatest test President Enrique Peña Nieto will face. Polls suggest no party will win absolute majority in the lower chamber of Congress. The ruling PRI party is expected to win about 40% of the seats.
Everyone is saying, don't vote. Don't go and vote because of the violence.
The US Embassy in Mexico announced an emergency travel alert to all its citizens, warning them against traveling to Oaxaca until unrest there ended. The diplomatic mission in Mexico City also said flights to the Oaxaca City airport had been suspended due to protesters who blocked all entrances and accesses to the terminal.
And now to our correspondent in Mexico, Clinton Khan, for more information regarding the tense electoral climate in Oaxaca.
Here on the highway that goes to Oaxaca City, Maximina Ramirez tries to maintain a living. When asked about the Sunday's national elections, the indigenous Mixteca woman says the political class only provides empty promises.
The political party, whether it is one or the other, bring us the stars. Like a teenager when one promises the stars to a 15-year-old girl. And what happens? They are put aside and one is forgotten.
Ramirez fears that the direction and trend of current public policies will not favor her or the rest of the 25% of those living far below the poverty line in the state of Oaxaca.
It will be like before. My parents used to tell me that he who had money would be able to study and those who didn't wouldn't. I think the same is happening now. It is coming back.
Yet these public policies are not passed quietly. Members of the 75,000-strong Section 22 of the National Teachers Union have called a strike, organizing blockades, sit-ins, and toll booth takeovers as part of a strategy to boycott the elections and denounce the country's recent wave of structural neoliberal reforms.
The 11 reforms that have been passed are not the reality that the government is conveying of great advances. In fact, it is the opposite, bringing us great poverty and marginalization in our communities, along with the shortages in basic services.
The militant Oaxacan teachers also shut down the state's international airport, flexing their muscle against what they say are authoritarian and violent strategies employed by the authorities to quiet protest.
Others can now come and evict you from your home, and you can't say anything. And if you say something, here comes the police to beat you. And if you say something, here is the gun that kills. And if you say something, here is the person that will disappear you. This is the reality of our country.
Although the climate has been relatively calm and peaceful since the teachers and their supporters began their strike on Monday, they say they expect sharper and more violent responses to their actions as Election Day approaches. Clayton Cantela Sur, Oaxaca City.
The 37th cycle of the talks for peace in Colombia are scheduled to end in Havana in the next few hours. The dialogue has centered on the victims of the conflict, which are estimated to be in the millions. The left FARC rebels have said that not one insurgent is willing to be punished for actions committed as part of the civil war. They also said that the national reconciliation changes that need to be made to eradicate poverty, inequality, and the lack of true democracy. We continue in Colombia, where our correspondent Natalia Margarita has information on the demands by victims of the civil war to declassify armed conflict as secret files.
Out of the 5-point negotiation agenda between the government and the FARC, victims has been the most widely discussed one. For almost a year, the parties have tried to construct an agreement on that regard, and yet one has not been reached.
The whole topic of victims depends on the agreement on the issue of truth, as truth is basically a starting point to discuss not just the transitional justice measures, but also victims' compensation and responsibilities acknowledgement.
Jose, whose father was assassinated in 1989, went to Washington in 2014 in an attempt to raise awareness on the importance of declassifying Colombia's conflict-related secret files that remain in the United States archives.
Those archives clearly contain the truth on the responsibility that security organisms, the CIA, the FBI, and even the United States Army bear over the Colombia's conflict reality, a reality that has to do with the already documented interference of the United States on what had happened in this country.
As Colombia's peace process enters a definitive stage where truth has come as a pressing issue, different voices have expressed their concern over the future of the secret files.
If those archives get destroyed, disappeared, or if we researchers and the Colombian citizens don't get access to those archives, we will never certainly know what the armed conflict in Colombia has been about.
For the victims of state crimes, the release of these files has also to do with the possibility of the guarantee of non-repetition as a fundamental part of victims' compensation.
History has been built on top of the secret archives, the history of the state responsibility denial. What we currently need is a responsible state that acknowledges its responsibility for the conflict and that looks forward towards institutional reform to guarantee that this won't happen again.
The FARC peace delegation has also demanded the government declassify the secret archives, seeing it as a key step toward truth clarification and acknowledgement of responsibilities, something that the victims have been demanding too. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
In Argentina, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets and later gathered in front of the National Congress building in Buenos Aires to demand the end of femicide. Women's rights group Casa del Encuentro said that in 2014 alone, 277 women were killed by men simply because of their gender. Similar protests were held in many Argentinian cities, as well as in Chile and Uruguay. Protesters complained the justice system has failed to effectively punish those who commit femicide.
The judges, the sentences, that's what's most important. Because today they kill and tomorrow they are free and the next day they go on killing. They keep killing because nothing happens.
In Guatemala City, two gunmen on a motorcycle riddled with bullets. One of the former dictator Efraín Ríos Montt's defense lawyers, Francisco Palomo, was in his car when the hitman approached him, shooting him 12 times. The gunmen are still at large. Palomo was a member of the attorney team defending Ríos Montt, who has managed to avoid jail despite being linked to the killing of at least 8,700 million people in the early 1980s. Israeli forces once again have launched attacks on Gaza with bombing raids. The airstrikes were in retaliation to rockets launched into Israeli territory. Israel Ministry of Defense said it held Hamas responsible for the attacks, even if the rockets had been launched by a jihadist group opposed to the Islamic Resistance Movement. Witnesses and medical officials said the attacks on Gaza caused some damage, but no casualties. The attacks against Israel were claimed by a group sympathetic with ISIS. And now to China. Thousands of rescue workers continue to make desperate efforts to rescue victims of the boat that capsized in Yangtze River Monday. However, hopes for more survivors are fading as time passes. So far, only 14 survivors have been rescued and 75 bodies have been recovered. Close to 400 people remain missing. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has announced that a debt deal with the European Union and the International Monetary Fund was closed. The IMF and the EU have been exerting extreme pressure on the Syriza government. They apparently seek to discourage our left governments from rising to power in Europe and adopting anti-austerity measures. So far, Cyprus has not bowed to pressure and insists his government will not implement reforms that would affect his people. He also said the differences remained with the EU and IMF, but assured Greece would make the $335 million payment due to the IMF June the 5th.
Don't worry about that.
How many days to make an agreement?
We have already paid 7.5 billion, so we will continue.
Separatist officials in eastern Ukraine accused the Kyiv government forces of violating the ceasefire again. Heavy artillery destroyed a supermarket. A rebel claim at least 15 civilians were killed and about 90 injured. The Kyiv forces also shelled a coal mine near Donetsk. Emergency crews rushed to the mine and rescued 40 people, but about 340 more remained trapped. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticized the attacks and noted that the victims and the damages are only to the people of eastern Ukraine.
Considering the information which is available from the territories, which are now combat zones, that are located along the line of engagement, colossal devastation of civil infrastructure, hospitals, schools, kindergartens, residential buildings is being reported solely from the side of the self-defense forces. Only on that side, peaceful civilians are dying. From the side which is controlled by the Ukrainian authorities, we only hear about military casualties.
The world of football is still shocked due to the developments surrounding the in-depth corruption scandal affecting FIFA. Here is the latest.
Former Vice President of FIFA Jack Warner of Trinidad and Tobago went on national television in his country to say he feared for his life because of all the information he has regarding FIFA corruption. He said the football organization went as far as illegally funding elections in the Caribbean nation. He also said he has piles of evidence that he will soon make public.
I also will give them my knowledge of financial transactions at FIFA, including, but not limited, to Sepp Blatter.
Warner's statement comes just hours after it was revealed that U.S. former FIFA executive Charles Blazer had admitted to receiving bribes in bidings for the 1998 World Cup in France and the 2010 in South Africa. Blazer served as a whistleblower after a guilty plea agreement in November 2013. He wore a microphone to help U.S. authorities in their investigations into alleged FIFA corruption. And a day after information surfaced that the FBI and U.S. prosecutors were investigating Joseph Blatter, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch declined to comment whether he was under investigation. She also refused to comment regarding Blatter's decision to resign. Lynch confirmed matters involving the World Cup awarding to be Russia in 2018 and Qatar in 2022 were being investigated by Swiss authorities.
We are not able to comment further on the nature of other individuals who may or may not be under investigation.
After London Mayor Boris Johnson said his city was prepared to celebrate a World Cup if it were to be cancelled elsewhere, Russian top officials dismissed concern that the country might lose the right to host the 2018 World Cup finals or face a boycott by other nations. Reuters said the awarding of the World Cup to Russia and Qatar was being investigated by the FBI.
More on these on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Thank you for watching and have a good day.